How to study a person. This podcast is at the basic level. It requires no knowledge of Accordance Bible software or Hebrew or Greek. Many of our users have begun to look to us to help them study the Bible, not just teach them to use the software we publish. So this is the first in a number of How to Study the Bible podcasts. In this case, how to study a person in the Bible. Feel free to use the podcast as a guide to personal study or as a short introductory clip for your Bible class, congregation, or study group. There are 3 basic steps to researching anything or anyone in the Bible: identify, investigate, and evaluate. The first task, identify, determines the focus of our research. The second, investigate, is where we gather information. The third, evaluate, is the sifting, collating, and corroborating that concludes all good detective work. While most studies begin with a search for a word or phrase, studying a biblical person should begin with a good Bible dictionary. Why? Because many people in the Bible share the same name. Others have 2 or even more names and are sometimes referred to by title instead of a name. A Bible dictionary can save us hours of time and frustration. It lists all the people who share the same name and each person's titles. Once we've accessed the right article, we look for all the names and titles associated with this person, others who might share the same name or title, and finally, the meaning of each name or title. We may have to read several articles in our quest, but it will be worth it. Here's an example of one very famous person in the Bible who had 2 names: Abram, whose name was changed to Abraham. Notice the first passage also contains one of his titles, the father of a multitude of nations. Armed with the information from step 1, it's time to investigate this person's life. Perhaps we ought to think of ourselves as detectives, trying to find out as much about this person as possible. In this step, we'll use multiple sources, but begin with the Bible itself. We use Accordance to search for every occurrence of these names and titles, then compile a reference list of those passages that refer to this particular person. For now, it's important to let ourselves be guided by the Bible dictionary article we've chosen. Now it's time to collect as much information about this person as we can, using the timeline, commentaries, study Bibles, Bible dictionaries, in fact, whatever resources we have. We need to think outside the box. Too many novices looking for spiritual guidance investigate only the spiritual aspects of a person in the Bible, but no one is an island, nor are spiritual decisions made in a vacuum. Instead, it is better to investigate the person's whole life. In fact, the more we discover about each person as an individual, the better we can understand his or her unique role in God's plan. The German would be Heilgeschichte. Step 3 is the hard part: evaluate. You'd be amazed how many people neglect this step, thinking their job is over once they've collected the data. It's important to split this evaluation into 2 parts. First, we evaluate the person's historical contribution. In what areas did he or she make the greatest impact? How did he or she make a difference in the lives of those around him? Now, let's provide a more personal contemporary evaluation. Are there aspects of this person's life that are good, solid, positive examples? What about mistakes? Are there actions that should serve as warnings for us? It's important to be balanced in our assessment. We don't want to lionize the person, polishing them up so that they're so shiny that no one could possibly measure up to them. After all, as Gordon Fee and Douglas Stewart have said, God is supposed to be the hero of every story in the Bible, not the individual God used. By the way, a user tool would be a great place to record our research and our personal evaluation. And if you don't know how to use one, check podcast number 30. Consider this biblical assessment of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, for example. It appears in 1 Kings 22:41 and following. It lists Jehoshaphat's great accomplishments, but also the things that he left undone. It's a great model of a balanced assessment. Now, let's investigate some people for ourselves, in accordance. Today, I thought we'd take a look at Joash, who happens to appear in Amos 1:1 and named as king of Israel. The first thing I'm going to do is to shift triple click. Shift triple click always opens the last tool used, but in a key numbered text it has the advantage of opening the last English tool used. And here I find out that this particular Joash happens to be number 4, King of Israel. I'm going to copy that, and what I've decided to do is to actually use a scratch pad that I've designed in my user tools to collect the information. So I'm going to paste that information here. Then I'm going to go back to my New Unger's Bible Dictionary, see where it says see Jehoash. I'm going to click on that hypertext link. Here I notice that it happens to be number 2 that I'm interested in. I'll click back to that, select the rest of that article so I can gather more information. This time I'm going to use copy as citation. It's listed right here, and you can see that it is Control-Command-C. Now notice the difference when I paste that. It'll include this bibliographic information right here. As long as I'm investigating Bible dictionaries, I think I'll check another one just to make sure I get a well-rounded set of information. In this particular case, in Holman's Illustrated Bible Dictionary, I see that Jehoash happens to be number 8. I'll click down, there's number 8. I'll copy that information there by Gene Hendrickson, and again I'm going to use copy as citation. And I'll paste it in my scratch pad as well. Now, I've noticed in my research that Jehoash is also known by the name Jehoash. So let's go ahead and search for both of those names in the Bible. And I think probably the first thing I ought to do is to select all and then copy as, this time, copy as references. That'll mean that I won't have the scriptures themselves, just simply the references. Now, let's see what else I can do with this list of verses. Now, as I'm scrolling through these, I'm going to pick one of these things that says Jehoash right here. I'm going to amplify it to the timeline. And here I can see by clicking on the timeline not only who else happens to be around at this particular time, but also the dates of his reign here. By the way, at any point in this, I can consult a reference tool by the same Shift triple click, which will open my last reference tool. It happens to be the Holman Bible Commentary, another new module in accordance, and I'm going to copy this, not so much to find out about Jehoash, but to get a little bit more background on why he was mentioned in this particular verse. I'll click Update, and you can see the results of my research here in the scratch pad. Let me shrink the font to something so you can see more information at a single glance. That's how we investigate a biblical person using the features in accordance. My father-in-law preached for over 40 years, most of them with nothing more than a Scofield Bible, a Strong's Concordance, a Bible dictionary, and a Matthew Henry commentary. He had a good ministry, too, primarily because he knew how to use them and used them a lot. I trust this podcast will help you get more out of your own resources and, more importantly, out of the Bible itself. This has been Dr. J for Accordance Bible Software. Thank you for watching this episode of Lighting the Lamp.